Stop for a moment and don't rush by this. You should really take your time, think about what is going on. Everything is not meant to be rushed in life. Life is full of things that we need to slow down for. Some moments are meant to slow you down enough for you to actually feel what has been building inside of music or people, or just life in general. These moments can be really helpful for you to understand what is going on inside of you. What you are feeling right now matters more than you may be admitting to yourself. The way you feel is important. You should think about it. Because there is a kind of weight that does not always show on the outside. This weight can be inside of you. You may not even notice it. It does not always look like sadness. It does not always look like struggle. Sometimes it looks like being fine when you're actually not fine. You can be feeling really bad, still look fine to other people. Sometimes it looks like going through the day, doing what needs to be done, answering messages, showing up where you are expected to show up, and still feeling something inside that does not fully settle. A quiet heaviness, a quiet tiredness, a quiet pressure that does not leave even when everything around you is normal. And maybe you have been ignoring it for a while just to keep going. Maybe you told yourself it is not that serious. Or maybe you just learned how to function while carrying it. But deep down, you know something inside you has been stretched. Not broken in a loud way, but worn in a silent way. If that is where you are right now, then stay here for a moment. You do not have to figure anything out right now. You do not have to fix anything in this instant. You do not have to force yourself to be okay while listening to this. You are allowed to just be here. Because this moment is not asking for performance. It is asking for honesty in your own heart. You did not end up here by accident. And that does not mean everything in your life is suddenly explained. It simply means that sometimes, even in ordinary moments, something reaches you at the exact time you needed a pause. A pause from overthinking. A pause from carrying everything alone. A pause from pretending you are not tired when you are. Right now, you are not forgotten. Even if life has made you feel overlooked at times. Even if people around you do not fully understand what is happening inside you. Even if you have learned how to smile through things that actually hurt more than you say. God knows exactly what you have been carrying. Not only what is visible. Not only what you can explain, but everything underneath it. The thoughts you do not say out loud. The worries you keep repeating in your mind when no one is around. The pressure you feel to hold everything together even when you feel like you are running low inside. The emotional exhaustion that builds slowly when you have been strong for too long without real relief. Nothing about that is hidden. Nothing about that is ignored. There are battles that do not get spoken. Not because they are not real, but because they are too heavy to explain or too personal to put into words. The kind of battles that happen in your mind when the world becomes quiet. The kind that show up at night when distractions fade and your thoughts become louder than everything else. The kind where you replay conversations, question decisions, think about outcomes, and carry uncertainty you do not know how to fully release. And in those moments, it can feel like you are carrying everything alone. But you are not unseen in that place. God sees the silent battles in your heart. The ones no one else notices. The ones you do not post about. The ones you do not explain. The ones you just live through quietly. Every thought you tried to manage by yourself. Every moment you felt uncertain but kept going anyway. Every time you pushed through, even when something inside you wanted to stop and rest. None of that has been overlooked. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That does not mean you have to look a certain way for God to care. It does not mean you have to be strong first. It means in the exact places where your heart feels heavy, God is not far away from you. He is close, even if you do not feel it instantly. Even if everything inside you still feels overwhelmed. Even if your thoughts are still unsettled. Close does not always feel loud. Sometimes it feels quiet. Sometimes it feels like a small moment of peace you cannot fully explain, but still notice in the middle of everything else. Before you move past this moment, stay here a little longer. Not because you need to solve your entire life today. Not because you need to fix every problem right now. But because your mind has probably been running without enough pause. And your heart may need just a few moments where it is not carrying everything at full strength. Take a deep breath and listen carefully. You are not required to solve everything in this moment. You are not required to carry everything at once. And you are not required to hold yourself together perfectly while listening to this. Matthew 11:28 says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Not more pressure. Not more weight. Rest. That is not something you have to earn. It is something offered to you, even in the middle of where you are right now. And maybe that is difficult to understand when life has been heavy for a while. Because when you are used to carrying things alone, rest can feel unfamiliar. But that does not mean it is not available. Psalm 46:1 says, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in trouble." Not distant, not unaware, not waiting for you to become stronger before being present. Ever present, meaning even in this moment. Even in what you are feeling right now as you listen. Even in the thoughts you have not said out loud. And maybe you are not sure what to do with all of this right now. Maybe you are not even looking for answers in this moment. Maybe you just needed something that slows everything down for a second. Something that reminds you that you are not alone in what you are carrying. So stay here a little longer. Let your thoughts slow down just a little. Let the pressure ease just for a moment. You do not have to rush forward emotionally. You do not have to figure everything out today. Because even now, your story is not finished. And even now, you are not forgotten in it. God is closer than you think right now. And as you stay in this moment, something important begins to settle in. Because it is one thing to hear that you are not alone. But it is something deeper to realize that what you have been carrying has never been invisible. There are parts of your life that others may never fully notice. Not because they do not care, but because what you carry is often hidden beneath everything you show to the world. You wake up and you keep going. You do what needs to be done. You answer what needs to be answered. You show up where you are expected to show up. But inside, there are moments when you feel like you are running on empty. Moments when your mind feels full, even when your day looks normal. Moments when your heart feels tired in ways you cannot easily explain. And over time, you may have gotten used to that feeling. Not because it stopped hurting, but because you learned how to live around it. There is a kind of exhaustion that does not always show in the body. It shows in your thoughts. It shows in your patience. It shows in how easily you feel overwhelmed by things that used to feel simple. It shows in the way you sit quietly sometimes, just trying to process everything at once. And even then, you do not always say anything about it. Because some things feel too heavy to explain. Or too personal to put into words. Or too complicated to expect anyone else to fully understand. But even in that silence, you are not unseen. God understands the silent battles in your heart. The thoughts that repeat when everything gets quiet. The worries you try to push aside but keep returning anyway. The emotional weight of trying to hold everything together while feeling like you are slowly running out of strength inside. The pressure of being okay when you do not fully feel okay. The feeling of trying your best, yet still wondering if it is enough. And even the moments when you question yourself more than anyone else ever does. You have been carrying more than people realize. More than you have probably told anyone. More than you may even fully admit to yourself. And yet you still keep going. Still trying. Still showing up. Still moving forward even when it feels like you are doing it with very little left inside. That kind of strength does not always feel like strength. Sometimes it just feels like survival. But even in your exhaustion, God has not left you. Not in the moments you felt strong. And not in the moments you felt like you were barely holding on. There is a presence that does not leave you just because you feel tired. There is a care that does not disappear just because you feel overwhelmed. He sees every tear, every fear, every sleepless night. Every night where your mind would not quiet down. Every moment you lay awake, thinking about things you cannot fully control. Every time you wished things would just become clear, but they stayed uncertain instead. Nothing about that has gone unnoticed. You are not invisible to God. Even when you feel like your life is quiet and unseen by others. Even when you feel like your struggles are too small to mention or too complicated to explain. Even when you feel like you are carrying everything without anyone really noticing how heavy it feels. There are moments in life where people misunderstand your silence. They may think you are fine because you are not saying anything. They may think you are strong because you are still functioning. But God sees beyond that surface level. He sees the parts of you that do not get spoken. The parts that only exist in your thoughts when everything else is still. Psalm 121:1-2 says, "My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth." That means your strength is not limited to what you can produce on your own. It means there is help beyond what people can see. Help that is not dependent on your ability to explain everything perfectly. Help that reaches you even in silence. And even now, in what you are carrying, you are not without support. Isaiah 41:10 says, "Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you." That does not remove every difficulty instantly. But it reminds you that you are not facing anything alone. Not in your thoughts. Not in your waiting. Not in your exhaustion. There is also something deeply human about feeling like you are walking through a valley season, where things are not fully clear, where answers feel delayed, where emotions feel heavier than usual. And yet you keep moving forward anyway. Psalm 23:1-4 speaks into that when it says that even though you walk through the valley, you are not abandoned in it. There is presence even there. Not distant, not disconnected, but with you, in the middle of it, in the quiet moments, in the uncertain ones, in the ones where you are not sure how much longer you can carry everything the way you have been. And maybe right now, you are not looking for perfect answers. Maybe you are just needing to feel understood, to feel seen, to feel like what you are carrying is not ignored or dismissed. So just stay here for a little longer. Let the pressure inside you ease even slightly. Let your thoughts slow down without forcing anything. Because even in this moment, you are not alone. Even in this moment, you are not forgotten. And even in this moment, you are still being held in ways you cannot always see, but are not without meaning. And as you continue here in this quiet moment, something begins to shift gently in the way you think about your own journey. Because there is a kind of pain that does not always come from what is happening right now, but from what has not happened yet. From what you have been waiting for. From what you have been praying for. From what you have been hoping would already be different by now. And when time passes and things still feel the same, something inside you can start to feel tired in a deeper way. Not just tired of life, but tired of waiting. Tired of asking. Tired of hopping. Tired of wondering if anything is actually changing when you cannot see it yet. If that is where you are emotionally, then listen gently without pressure. God has not forgotten your prayers. Not a single one. Not the ones you spoke out loud. Not the ones you whispered when no one was around. And not even the ones you could not fully put into words, but only carried in your heart. There are prayers people forget they prayed because so much time passes. But God does not lose track of what you brought to Him in your most honest moments. Even when your circumstances have not changed yet, that does not mean your prayers were ignored. There is a difference between silence and absence. And sometimes that difference is the hardest thing to understand when you are in the middle of waiting. Because waiting has a way of making everything feel unclear. It can make you question if anything is happening at all. It can make you wonder if you misunderstood what you were hoping for. It can make you feel like nothing is moving, even when life keeps going around you. But your waiting season has purpose. Even when it feels slow. Even when it feels confusing. Even when it feels like you are stuck in the same place emotionally, while everything else seems to move forward for others. There are seasons in life where growth is not visible on the surface, where something is happening underneath what you can see, where God is not ignoring you, but shaping something in ways you do not fully understand yet. And even in those unseen places, nothing about your prayers has been dismissed. Even when heaven feels silent, God is still listening. Silence does not mean distance, and delay does not mean denial. There are moments in Scripture where people waited far longer than they expected. People who believed, who prayed, who held on through uncertainty, even when nothing seemed to change right away. And their stories remind us that delay is not the same as absence. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future." That means your life is not random. Even when it feels uncertain. Even when it feels paused. Even when it feels like you are in between what you expected and what is still unfolding. There is still intention behind your journey. There is still purpose in what you are walking through. There are times when life does not unfold in the timing you expected. And in those moments, it becomes easy to think that nothing is happening. But sometimes what is happening is not visible yet. Sometimes what is being built in your life is still in progress beneath the surface of what you can see. God is still working behind the scenes. Even when your emotions feel quiet. Even when your situation feels unchanged. Even when your prayers feel like they are still waiting for answers. There is movement in places you cannot measure yet. There is preparation in areas you cannot fully understand yet. And there is direction even when the path does not feel fully clear. Romans 8:28 reminds us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who are called according to His purpose. Not just in the moments that make sense. Not just in the moments that feel good. But even in the waiting, even in the silence, even in the uncertainty. Nothing is wasted in God's timing. And even now, as you are hearing this, your waiting is not empty. Your prayers are not forgotten. And your story is still unfolding in ways you may not yet be able to see, but are not without purpose. And as you stay here for a moment, something begins to gently settle inside this space you are in. Because after thinking about waiting and unanswered prayers and seasons that feel unclear, it is very natural for the mind to start carrying more than it was ever meant to hold at once. Thoughts begin to stack on top of each other. Questions that do not have answers, yet start replaying again and again. What if this does not change? What if things get worse? What if I am missing something? What if I am not strong enough for what is ahead? And slowly, without even noticing it, your mind can become a place where peace feels harder to reach. If that is what has been happening inside you, then just stay here gently for a moment. Take a deep breath and listen carefully. Not everything your mind is carrying right now is something you are meant to solve in this moment. Not every thought that comes to you is something you are meant to answer today. Some of what you are feeling is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you have been carrying too much for too long without enough rest inside. And that is where God meets you, not with pressure, but with peace. Fear does not have the final word over your life. Even if fear has been loud lately, even if fear has been persistent, even if fear has been sitting quietly in the background of your thoughts every day, it is not the voice that defines your future. There are moments when fear feels like it is trying to predict everything that has not even happened yet. And in doing that, it steals the peace of the moment you are actually in. But you are not meant to live inside that pressure. You are not meant to carry every outcome before it even arrives. God is holding you together even now, even in the moments where you feel emotionally stretched, even in the moments where your thoughts feel too heavy to organize, even in the moments where you are trying to stay strong while everything inside you feels tired. You do not have to carry this alone. Not the questions, not the uncertainty, not the emotional weight of trying to figure out everything at once. There is a kind of peace that does not depend on having answers. A peace that can reach you even in the middle of uncertainty. A peace that does not require everything in your life to be settled before it arrives. God's peace can reach you even here. Even in this moment of listening. Even in this season of not fully knowing what comes next. There is a reason Scripture speaks so directly about anxiety. Because God understands how quickly the human heart can become overwhelmed when it is trying to carry tomorrow and today at the same time. Philippians 4:6-7 says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And that is not just a statement for peaceful moments in life. It is a promise spoken directly into the middle of anxious ones. Into the moments where your thoughts feel loud. Into the moments where your emotions feel unsettled. Into the moments where you are trying to hold everything together while feeling like something inside you is quietly coming apart. The peace of God is described as something that guards your heart and mind. That means it is not fragile. It is not temporary. It is not dependent on everything around you being perfect first. It is a steady covering that can reach you even when your thoughts are not steady yet. Even when your emotions are not steady yet. Even when your situation is not steady yet. So just stay here a little longer. Not rushing anything. Not trying to fix everything in your mind right now. Just allowing yourself to breathe a little more slowly than before. Because sometimes anxiety grows strongest in moments where everything feels like it must be solved immediately. But not everything is meant to be solved in one sitting of the mind. Some things are meant to be released instead of carried. Some things are meant to be placed into God's hands instead of constantly replayed in your thoughts. Isaiah 43:2 says, "When you pass through the waters, I will be with you." It does not say you will never pass through difficulty. It says you will not pass through it alone. And that changes everything about how a season feels. Because the presence of God does not always remove the situation instantly. But it does change what the situation does inside you. It keeps you from being consumed by it. It keeps you from being swallowed by it. It keeps you from believing that what you are facing is stronger than the one who is walking with you through it. And even now, in the middle of everything you have been carrying, you are still being held in ways you may not fully recognize yet. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Not be perfect, not have all answers, not fix everything immediately. Just be still. Because stillness is not weakness. Stillness is the moment where you stop trying to carry everything in your own strength long enough to remember that you were never meant to carry it alone. There is a difference between thinking and overthinking. Thinking helps you move forward. Overthinking keeps you stuck inside the same circle of fear, replaying possibilities that have not even happened. And slowly, it drains peace without giving clarity. That is why this moment matters. Because right now, you are being invited out of that cycle. Not by force, not by pressure, but by a gentle reminder that you do not have to keep holding everything in your mind at once. You can pause. You can breathe. You can release what your heart was never meant to carry alone. Fear may try to speak loudly about your future, but fear does not get to decide your future. It only tries to distract you from the peace that is already available to you in this moment. And even if everything around you still feels uncertain, you are not abandoned in that uncertainty. You are not forgotten in it. You are not left alone to figure it all out by yourself. God is still with you, not only in the answers you are waiting for, but in the space between the questions. And in this moment, that is enough to begin finding peace again. And as you remain in this quiet space, something deeper begins to gently form inside your heart. Not a sudden answer, not a full explanation, but a shift in how you hold what you do not yet understand. Because there are moments in life where clarity does not come quickly and direction does not feel obvious and the next step does not feel fully clear. And in those moments, the human heart naturally wants certainty before it takes another step. It wants understanding before trust. It wants answers before movement. It wants to see the full picture before continuing the journey. But faith does not always work that way. There are seasons where you are only given enough light for the next step, not the entire path. And that can feel uncomfortable, because you are used to wanting to know where everything is going. You are used to wanting clarity before commitment. You are used to wanting confirmation before continuing forward. But God often leads differently than human expectation. We walk by faith, not by sight. Not because sight is unimportant, but because sight is limited. And there are things ahead of you that you cannot yet see, even though they are already being prepared. So in this moment, you are being invited into something quieter. Not rushing ahead. Not forcing answers. Not trying to predict everything that is going to happen next, but learning how to trust step by step, even when the full picture is not visible yet, even when emotions feel uncertain, even when questions remain unanswered. God is guiding you even in this season of confusion. Not only when you feel confident, not only when you feel sure, but also when you feel unsure, hesitant, and overwhelmed by not knowing. And that kind of guidance requires a different kind of trust. A trust that is not based on what you can see right now, but on the belief that you are not walking alone. There may be moments where you pause and wonder if you are making the right decisions. Moments where you question the direction of your life. Moments where you feel like you are standing between what was and what is not yet clear. But even there, your story is not over. You are not at the end of your path. You are not stuck in a place without movement. Even if it feels like that emotionally, there is still a bigger story unfolding beyond what you can currently see. God's timing is still perfect. Not rushed. Not delayed by accident. Not forgotten, but unfolding in a way that often only makes sense in hindsight. And that is one of the hardest parts of faith. You are asked to trust before you understand, to keep going before you see the outcome, to believe that even now something meaningful is being shaped in your life. Even now, God is preparing something you cannot yet see. There are situations that feel unclear right now, but clarity is not always immediate. Sometimes understanding comes later, after you have already walked through the season that felt confusing in the moment. And when you look back, you begin to see that even the uncertainty had direction. Even the waiting had purpose. Even the silence had meaning. But right now, you are still in the middle of it. And being in the middle requires a different kind of strength. Not the strength of having all answers, but the strength of continuing anyway. Joshua 1:9 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid, do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." That means courage is not the absence of uncertainty. Courage is moving forward even while uncertainty still exists. And you are not doing that alone. There is a quiet guidance that does not force you forward, but gently leads you through each step as you are ready for it. Sometimes you will not feel it in dramatic ways. Sometimes it will feel subtle, like small confirmations, like quiet moments of clarity, like peace in places where fear used to sit. And even those small moments are part of how God leads. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight." Not always immediately visible, not always fully explained, but still being directed, still being shaped, still being held. And even in the uncertainty, there is something steady underneath everything unstable you may feel right now. God has not stopped writing your story. And what feels unclear today will not remain unclear forever. So for now, you are not being asked to figure everything out. You are being invited to trust one step at a time. Even when the next step feels small. Even when it feels uncertain. Even when it feels slow. Because faith is not built in moments of full clarity. It is strengthened in seasons where you choose to keep going without it. And in that place, even now, you are still being guided, still being held, and still being led toward what you cannot yet fully see. And as you continue in this place of quiet reflection, something begins to gently reshape the way you see your current season. Because when life feels still, it can often feel like nothing is happening at all. Like nothing is changing. Like nothing is moving forward. Like everything is paused in a way that makes you question whether anything is being built at all beneath the surface. But not everything that is happening in your life is visible right now. Some of the most important work is not happening where your eyes can see it. It is happening deeper than that. In places you cannot measure yet. In ways you cannot fully understand yet. And that is where faith begins to shift from seeing results to trusting process. Because God is still working even when you cannot see it. Even when your situation feels unchanged. Even when your emotions feel like nothing is shifting. Even when your prayers feel like they are still waiting in silence. There is still movement happening in your life right now. Not always loud. Not always obvious. Not always immediate. But real. And intentional. And ongoing. Think about how growth actually works in nature. A seed does not become a tree overnight. In fact, most of what happens first is hidden underground. Nothing visible at the surface looks impressive at the beginning. It looks still. It looks inactive. It looks like nothing is happening at all. But beneath the surface, something is forming. Roots are spreading. Strength is developing. Stability is being built in a way that cannot yet be seen. And only after time passes does the visible evidence appear. That is often how God works in your life as well. Quietly, slowly, deeply, not always in ways that immediately make sense, but always in ways that are preparing you for what is ahead. God has not stopped moving in your life. Even if it feels like nothing around you is changing, that does not mean nothing is happening within you or around you. There are things being aligned right now that you do not yet have visibility into. There are connections being shaped. There are paths being adjusted. There are situations being prepared in ways that will only make sense later. He is making a way where you cannot yet see one. And that is where trust becomes important. Because if you only measure God's activity by what you can immediately see, then you will miss what is happening in the unseen places. You will overlook the quiet preparation. You will underestimate the slow unfolding. You will miss the deeper work happening beneath the surface of your current moment. But nothing about your life is random. Even the parts that feel paused are not without purpose. Even the parts that feel unclear are not without direction. This season is shaping you, not destroying you. Even if it feels uncomfortable at times. Even if it feels uncertain at times. Even if it feels like you are not where you thought you would be. There is shaping happening within you that cannot always be recognized immediately. Patience is being formed. Strength is being developed. Understanding is being deepened in ways that only time reveals. And through it all, you are not being abandoned in the process. You are being guided even now. Not only when things make sense. Not only when outcomes are visible. But even in the middle of what feels unclear and unfinished. There are moments where it may feel like nothing is changing externally, but internally, something is being strengthened in you. A different kind of resilience. A deeper kind of trust. A quieter kind of faith that does not rely only on visible confirmation. Romans 8:28 reminds us that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. Not just in obvious moments. Not just in easy moments. But in all things. Even in waiting. Even in uncertainty. Even in seasons that feel still. That means nothing in your life is wasted. Not the delays. Not the pauses. Not the questions. Not the confusion. Everything is being woven into something that will eventually reveal purpose in ways you cannot yet fully see. Luke 1:37 says, "For with God nothing shall be impossible." That means what feels impossible in your current perspective is not impossible in His process. What feels delayed is not denied. What feels unclear is not unfinished in His timing. There is a larger picture being formed than what you can currently see from where you are standing. And Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, "He has made everything beautiful in its time." Not instantly. Not always in the timing we expect. But in its time. which means there is a moment when what feels unclear now will begin to make sense. A moment when what feels slow will reveal its purpose. A moment when what feels hidden will become visible. And in that moment, you will begin to understand that even the waiting was part of something meaningful. So even now, in what feels like stillness, you are not forgotten in motion. You are not abandoned in silence. You are not left without direction. God is still working behind the scenes. And even when you cannot see it yet, your life is still moving towards something that is being carefully prepared in ways that are not random, but intentional. And you are being guided even now, step by step, even in the unseen parts of your journey. And now, as you continue listening in this quiet space, there is something important happening beneath everything you have been thinking and feeling. A soft invitation, not a pressure, not a demand, but an invitation to let your heart slow down for a moment. Because you have been carrying a lot for a long time. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And even when you try to stay strong, there are moments when the weight of everything you have been holding begins to show itself in quiet ways. In tired thoughts, in restless emotions, in that feeling of being worn down inside, even when you are still functioning on the outside. So right here, in this moment, you are allowed to stop carrying it all in your mind for just a little while. God wants to bring peace to your heart. Not a temporary distraction. Not something that fades the moment life gets difficult again. But a deeper peace. A settling of the soul. A quietness inside that does not depend on circumstances changing first. There is a kind of rest that only comes when you stop trying to hold everything together on your own. When you stop mentally replaying every situation. When you stop carrying every outcome in your thoughts. When you allow yourself to breathe without pressure for a moment. You do not have to stay trapped in fear. You do not have to keep living inside the weight of every what if. You do not have to keep holding every uncertainty in your mind as if it is yours to solve alone. Even now, in this moment, God's presence is still with you. Not distant, not disconnected, not unaware of what you feel, but close, steady, present in a way that reaches beyond what words can fully explain. There are things inside your heart that you may not have shared with anyone. Disappointments that still feel fresh in your memory. Moments that did not turn out the way you expected. Situations where you tried, prayed, hoped, and still felt like you came up empty-handed. And over time, those experiences can create quiet emotional wounds. Not always visible, not always spoken, but still deeply felt. And yet, even there, God is not absent. He is not looking away from your pain. He is not disconnected from your story. God is restoring what feels broken. Not always in the way we expect. Not always in the timing we want. But in ways that reach deeper than what is visible on the surface. Lamentations 3:22-23 says, "Because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed. For his compassions never fail, they are new every morning, great is his faithfulness." And in that truth, there is something steady you can hold on to right now, even in a season that feels emotionally uncertain. Because what this verse is really reminding you is that you are still here. Still breathing. Still carried. Still covered by a mercy that did not run out yesterday and will not run out today. Even when your emotions feel heavy, God's compassion is not heavy toward you. Even when you feel worn down, his care for you is not worn out. There is a renewal that does not depend on your strength being perfect first. It begins right where you are. Not when everything is fixed. Not when everything finally makes sense. But in the middle of it. right here, right now. Psalm 147:3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. That means God is not only aware of your pain, He is actively near it. Not distant from it, not unaware of it, but close to it, holding it with a kind of care that does not rush your healing, but stays with you through it. There are wounds that do not show on the outside, but God sees them clearly. The disappointments you never fully processed. The moments you tried to be strong when you were breaking inside. The situations you prayed about deeply, but still carried the weight of afterward. Nothing about that has been overlooked. Nothing about that has been ignored. And even now, healing is not something you have to force. It is something you are allowed to receive. Slowly, gently, without pressure to have it all figured out. John 14:27 says, Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid. This is not the kind of peace that depends on everything going right around you. This is the kind of peace that can exist even when things are still uncertain. Even when answers are still unfolding. Even when life still feels unfinished. It is a peace that does not demand perfection from your situation before it reaches your heart. So just for this moment, you do not have to keep holding everything together internally. You do not have to keep rehearsing every fear in your mind. You do not have to keep carrying the weight of what might happen next. You can allow yourself to be still for a moment. Not because everything is solved, but because you are not alone in what you are carrying. God wants to bring peace to your heart. Not a temporary feeling that disappears quickly, but a deeper settling inside you. A quiet assurance that you are not forgotten in this season. That your life is not unnoticed. That your pain is not invisible. You do not have to stay trapped in fear. Fear may have been loud in your thoughts, but it does not have authority over your life. There is still a greater presence holding you steady even now. His presence is still with you, not only in the moments when you feel strong, but also in the moments when you feel tired, when you feel uncertain, when you feel like you are barely holding on. Even there, you are not alone. God is restoring what feels broken. Not always instantly. Not always in ways you expect. But in ways that reach deeper than surface-level change. In ways that rebuild what has been worn down inside you. In ways that bring healing to places you thought would stay heavy forever. And you are deeply loved by God. Not because you have everything together. Not because you never struggle. But because His love reaches you exactly where you are. In your exhaustion. In your waiting. In your quiet moments when no one else sees what you are carrying. And right here, in this stillness, you are allowed to breathe again. Not because everything is perfect, but because you are being held through it. And as you continue here in this quiet moment, there is something important you may not always pause long enough to recognize. You are still here, still standing, still moving forward, even if it has been slowly. Still breathing through seasons that were heavier than you expected. And that alone carries a truth that often goes unnoticed in the middle of struggle. You have been carried farther than you realize. Through moments that could have broken you completely. Through days that felt overwhelming. Through nights where your thoughts were heavy and your heart felt tired. And yet you are still here. Not because everything has been easy, but because you have not been alone in the journey. God has carried you this far, even in the moments when you felt like you were barely holding on. Even in the times when you did not know how you would get through the next step. Even in the seasons where answers did not come quickly and strength felt limited. There was still a presence holding you steady. You are not walking through this alone. Even when it feels like no one fully understands what you are carrying, there is a guidance that has not left your side. There is a strength that has not stopped sustaining you. There is a presence that has remained constant even when everything around you felt uncertain. And sometimes, the fact that you are still moving forward is evidence of that strength working within you. Not in loud or dramatic ways, but in quiet endurance. In small steps you kept taking. In moments you thought you would not make it through, but somehow did. God will strengthen you, not only in the moments when you feel strong already, but especially in the moments when you feel weak, when your thoughts feel overwhelmed, when your emotions feel stretched, when your heart feels tired from carrying too much for too long. There is a strength that does not depend on your own ability to hold everything together. It is a strength that meets you in the middle of your limits and carries you beyond them. Isaiah 41:10 says, "So do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." That means even when you feel unsure, you are not unsupported. Even when you feel weak, you are not without help. Even when you feel overwhelmed, you are still being upheld. There is a steadying hand over your life that has not let you go. And even in the moments you did not notice it, protection has been surrounding you. Not always visible, not always recognized in real time, but real. He is protecting you in ways you cannot fully see, from things you are aware of, and from things you will never even realize were avoided or redirected in your life. There are moments where you look back and only later understand how things could have gone differently, how something that felt like delay was actually protection, how something that felt like loss was actually redirection, how something that felt confusing at the time was actually guidance you did not yet have clarity to understand. Psalm 121:7-8 says, "The Lord will keep you from all harm. He will watch over your life. The Lord will watch over your coming and going both now and forevermore." That is not distant protection. That is continuous care. In your movement, in your stillness, in your uncertainty, in your decisions, in every step you take, even when you are not fully confident, there is guidance that remains steady. God is your refuge and strength, not only in moments of crisis, but in everyday life, in the quiet thoughts you carry, in the decisions you are unsure about, in the places where you feel like you are still figuring things out. Refuge means a place of safety. Strength means support when your own feels limited. And together, they describe a presence that does not leave you exposed in your struggles. Even now, you are being guided. Not forced, not rushed, but led with care that considers every part of your journey. There are paths you have walked that did not make sense at the time, but brought you here. There are moments you thought were setbacks, but were actually shaping your direction. And there are things you are facing now that may not make full sense yet, but are still within a process that is not random. Nothing about your life is outside of awareness. Nothing about your journey is unnoticed. And nothing about your current season is beyond support. Even when you cannot trace the full picture, you are still being led step by step. So you do not need to fear what is ahead. You do not need to carry the pressure of figuring everything out at once. You do not need to assume you are alone in the process. Because you are not. You are being held. You are being guided. You are being strengthened even now. And even in this moment, there is a quiet reminder being placed in your heart. You have not been abandoned in the process. You have been carried through it. And as you continue here in this quiet space, something begins to gently shift again, not in your circumstances first, but in the way you begin to see what comes next. Because after everything you have carried, everything you have waited through, everything you have quietly endured, there comes a moment where your heart starts to ask a different kind of question. Not only, why did this happen? Not only, when will things change? But how do I move forward from here? And that question is not born from pressure. It is born from something deeper. A quiet desire to breathe again, to hope again, to take one step without feeling completely weighed down by fear. And in that space, you are not being asked to have everything figured out. You are simply being invited to walk forward in faith instead of fear. One step at a time. Not rushed, not forced, not overwhelmed by needing to see the entire path ahead. Just steady movement. Even when emotions fluctuate. Even when confidence feels small. Even when clarity is still developing. Your future is still in God's hands. Not in uncertainty. Not in chance. Not in the weight of every unknown you are trying to process. But in hands that are steady, aware, and present in every part of your journey. And that means you are not walking into your future alone. Even if it sometimes feels like you are figuring things out step by step, there is a direction being held over your life that is not random. Fear does not define your story. Fear may have spoken loudly in moments of uncertainty. Fear may have tried to shape how you see your situation. Fear may have made things feel heavier than they truly are. But fear is not the final voice over your life. There is something stronger guiding you forward. Something steadier than emotion. Something deeper than anxiety. God still has a plan for your life. Even if you cannot see every detail yet. Even if you are still in a season of becoming. Even if things feel unfinished right now. There is still a plan unfolding that is not disconnected from where you are today. And that plan is not fragile. It is not easily broken by delay. It is not erased by confusion. It continues even in seasons that feel unclear. You are stronger than this season. Not because everything feels easy, but because you are still here, still moving, still learning how to stand again after moments that tested your strength. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it looks like choosing to try again. Sometimes it looks like not giving up, even when you feel tired. Sometimes it looks like simply continuing forward when everything inside you feels uncertain. Keep walking forward with faith. Not with pressure to have all the answers. Not with expectation that everything must be perfect before you move. But with quiet trust that even small steps matter. Because faith is not always about seeing the full picture. Faith is about continuing even when the picture is still forming. Jeremiah 29:11 says, "For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to give you hope and a future." That means your future is not empty. It is not forgotten. It is not without direction. There is still hope attached to it. There is still purpose woven into it. And there is still a future ahead of you that is not defined by what you are facing right now. Joshua 1:9 says, "Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go." That does not mean you will never feel uncertainty. It means you are not alone in it. You are not abandoned in it. You are not walking through it without support. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is continuing even when fear tries to speak loudly. It is choosing trust even when emotions feel unstable. And it is allowing yourself to move forward without needing every answer first. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." That means strength is not something you have to manufacture on your own. It is something that can be renewed, even in the middle of exhaustion, even in the middle of uncertainty, even in the middle of slow seasons where progress feels hard to see. So you do not need to rush your process. You do not need to compare your journey to anyone else. And you do not need to feel behind in life. Because what God is building in you is not rushed, and it is not random. And even now, as you take this in, you are being gently reminded that your next step does not have to be perfect. It only needs to be faithful. One step at a time. One moment at a time. One decision at a time. And as you keep moving forward in that quiet faith, you are not walking alone. You are walking guided. You are walking held. And you are walking toward a future that still carries hope in it. And now, as this moment gently continues, let it not feel like something is ending too quickly, but rather like something is settling deeper within you. Because sometimes the most important part of a message is not what is said at the beginning or even what is said in the middle, but what remains with you when everything becomes quiet again. So stay here just a little longer. Let the noise of everything else fade for a moment. Let the weight you have been carrying loosen, even if only slightly. You do not need to rush back into everything waiting for you outside of this moment. You do not need to immediately solve what has been heavy on your mind. Right now, there is space for stillness. There is space for rest. There is space for your heart to stop striving for just a little while. And in that space, something gentle is always present. God is still with you. Not as a distant thought, not as something far away from your real life, but as a steady presence that does not leave when the video ends and does not disappear when the moment becomes quiet again. Even when you are alone in your room, even when the lights are off and the world feels far away, even when your thoughts become loud again later, you are still held. There is a kind of peace that does not depend on everything around you being perfect. It is not fragile. It is not temporary. It is not something that only exists when life is easy. It is a deeper kind of peace that can stay with you in the middle of uncertainty. A peace that does not demand explanations before it arrives. A peace that does not wait for everything to make sense. A peace that simply meets you where you are. And right where you are, even now, that peace is not far from you. You may not always feel it strongly. You may not always recognize it in the middle of your emotions. But it is not absent just because it is quiet. Sometimes God's presence is not loud. Sometimes it is steady. Soft, unmoving in its care for you, even when everything else feels uncertain. And in your life, even the parts that feel unfinished are not forgotten. Even the questions you still carry are not ignored. Even the things you have not been able to put into words are still known. You are not walking through life without guidance. You are not moving through your days without care. There is still direction being held over your journey, even when you cannot see every step ahead. And that means you do not have to fear what is next. Not because everything will always be easy, but because you are not walking into anything alone. There is a shepherd who does not lose sight of you. There is a presence that does not abandon you in confusion. There is a love that does not disappear in uncertainty. Psalm 23:1 speaks gently into this when it says, "The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing." Even when life feels like something is missing. Even when answers feel delayed. Even when emotions feel unsettled, you are still being cared for in ways that are deeper than what you can currently see. So let your heart rest in that for a moment. Not striving, not searching, not carrying everything at once. Just resting, because you do not have to hold your entire future in your mind right now. You do not have to carry every unknown possibility at the same time. You do not have to keep preparing for every outcome in fear. You are allowed to be still. Psalm 4:8 says, "In peace I will lie down and sleep, for you alone, Lord, make me dwell in safety." That is not just a verse about night. It is a reminder that your life is held in safety even when your thoughts are not fully quiet, even when your emotions are not fully settled, even when your circumstances are not fully resolved. There is still safety over your life that is greater than what you can control. And that safety is not fragile. It does not depend on your strength. It does not depend on your understanding. It does not depend on everything going right in order to remain true. It remains steady even when everything else feels uncertain. Philippians 4:7 says, "And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." That means there is a kind of peace that does not need to be fully understood to be real. A peace that protects your heart even when your thoughts are still processing. A peace that gently covers the places inside you that feel overwhelmed. So even now, you do not need to force anything. You do not need to fix anything in this moment. You do not need to carry everything forward from here. You are allowed to release what has been too heavy. You are allowed to breathe without pressure. You are allowed to simply exist in this moment without expectation. And as you do, remember this quietly. You are seen, not only in your strength, but also in your weakness. You are known, not only in your clarity, but also in your confusion. You are guided, even when you feel like you are still learning the next step. And you are not alone. Not now, not later, not in the seasons you understand, and not in the seasons you do not. So as this message comes to a gentle close, let it not feel like something leaving you, but something staying with you. A reminder that does not disappear when the video ends. A peace that does not depend on perfect circumstances. A presence that continues with you beyond this moment. Rest now, slowly, quietly, knowing that you are still in the hands of God.